The PSVR has arrived, bringing the most affordable and easiest option for jumping into virtual reality gaming. And thankfully, it's launched with a lot of games to choose from. So, for those of you planning on getting one ASAP, I've put together a list of the best games out right now that require PSVR to play that you have got to try. First off is Battlezone. Based on the old-school arcade classic, Battlezone has built upon the original tank simulation game and brought it into a more modern era with a layer of Tron paint thrown over to keep that retro 80s feel. You take control of one of a number of different tank designs, deploying on various missions across a randomized campaign against AI enemies offline or other players online. The interface might be a little intimidating at first, but after a match or two, you'll get comfortable with reading the entire console, keeping an eye on your shields and ammo while simultaneously skirmishing against your enemies. The learning curve isn't too high, but this is one of the more difficult PSVR games, and as a warning, is also one of the more draining for those of you with motion sickness, so be wary. If a slower, more tactical vehicle game is your style, this is the best option on PSVR right now. Second up is Until Dawn Rush of Blood. Now, this game caught me off guard. I really didn't expect much out of it, but it is so much fun, especially considering it's one of the cheaper games you can grab for PSVR right now. Its relation to Until Dawn is a bit tenuous. It's mostly an excuse for a branded rail shooter, but for a rail shooter, it's really good. The ambiance sucks you in, there's a lot of stuff going on making you look around constantly, and there's a bunch of hidden goodies to discover, making the game worth multiple playthroughs. You can play it with the DualShock 4 controller, but it is much better using a pair of motion controllers, allowing you to independently aim your guns and make the game a lot more immersive. This is one of the simpler games on PSVR, but it's a great game that accomplishes exactly what it sets out to do: be a creepy on-rail shooter, making it a no-brainer for fans of classic arcade horror games in the vein of House of the Dead. Now, for number 3, we're going to take a step away from the more serious and dark games and go to the entire other end of the spectrum with Job Simulator. Taking place in a far future where robots do all of the work, Job Simulator is an imagining of what exactly people might think we used to do these days, with pretty hilariously off ideas. It's not exactly complex or a particularly deep game, and more than anything is really just a proof of concept of what you can do in VR, but at the same time capitalizes on how imperfect VR controls can be right now that makes the whole thing tongue-in-cheek and just a ton of fun. If you want a VR game with less of a normal game goal and more just a funny way to mess around in a VR environment, this is a must-grab. On to number 4 on the list is the game that's really been like the poster child for VR gaming this past year, Valkyrie. Valkyrie achieves one of the most immediate dreams many of us have had about what we could do with VR, flying through space. And it does it pretty well. The entire game boils down pretty easily into matchmaking dogfighting in space, which is a lot of fun, but what really makes Valkyrie stand out is how it's an example of how immersive VR can be. Right when you lift off for the first time, you just immediately see and feel the difference VR makes for this style of game. And while there are plenty of different cockpit-based dogfight games out right now and in development, Valkyrie stands out as being one of the best. Last, and my personal favorite on the list, is Rigs. All the other games on this list, while fun, do feel a little more like pricey proof of concepts, ideas to be built upon for future games. Except for Rigs, which really feels like a fully fleshed out gaming experience. Combining the idea of mech combat and professional sports fused together, Rigs puts you in control of a fast-moving mech, squaring off against other players or AI in 3v3 matches that are either as simple as blow up as many enemies as you can, or something more like football or soccer where you fight over control of a ball and race to the enemy's goal. There's 4 different kinds of base mechs to choose from and a whole lot of different powered-up designs featuring special abilities and weapon loadouts, and you can unlock more customization options for your pilot by completing sponsored challenges like getting so many kills, touchdowns, or assists in a single match. You can treat it like a single-player game, just playing the offline league mode, or you can go online for full competitive multiplayer. Either way, it's easy to lose yourself in this game's intense combat, and is one of the strongest arguments for why to grab a PlayStation VR. Now, I do have one last honorable mention, which is Batman VR, basically a point-and-click puzzle game in the form of running around as Batman solving a mystery. Sharing its universe with the Arkham series of games, it's fun to play, if only to think you're Batman for even just a moment, though some people might be disappointed if they're looking for anything particularly action-heavy. Make no mistake, this is a mystery and story-driven game first and foremost, whose biggest appeal really is that it has a coat of Batman paint thrown over it. If you're a fan of Batman, this one's worth grabbing, and it's maybe worth a quick look if you just want to try VR games with a more interactive element. That, and it also lets you do this, which is pretty amazing.